Today, our portion is called Mishpatim, and it's Exodus 21, 1 to 24, 18. And I've entitled it From the River to the Sea. We all know what that means. Now, I remember our rabbi always telling us, don't get caught up in the details when you read the Torah. Just ask yourselves, to whom was God speaking, when, and where? Now, our Israelites had been freed from slavery in Egypt for years. That had been a nation with many gods. They had superstitions, idolatry, death cults, etc. It was a very different nation than the one that the God of Israel would now begin to form, and he would help them to change their paradigms, their belief systems. Slowly, he would redirect their focus from the gods of Egypt toward himself, the Creator. The key to understanding the Torah, all the passages in the Torah, is to take a step back, as if we're looking at a beautiful mosaic, and then search for the wonderful, life-changing principles that when we follow, God helps us to change for the better. Now, this week's portion is called Mishpatim. It means judgments, and it begins with slavery. The Israelites were well acquainted with the subject. They understood how slavery could eliminate all aspects of our free will. And it would take an entire generation before they could learn how to make their own decisions. We see that with people who've been freed from prison, how difficult it is after all those years of having all those things decided for them. Now they would have to make their own. That's one of the hardest things that we human beings have to do. I personally struggle every day with making the right decisions in so many areas of our life, in my life. And sometimes I make the wrong choices. Some things I handle poorly. Some things I handle well. But one of the things that Mishpatim teaches us that when we mess up, we have the opportunity to make restitution, to change it, to do things right, and to learn, hopefully, from our mistakes. Some of these, though, can come at a very heavy cost. But isn't it wonderful to know that our God always helps us to start again? When we walk with God, it's as if we're on an upward spiral. We take 2 steps forward, but only 1 step back. That means that we are always ahead. So that's why it's so important to take inventory of where we are instead of thinking that we're trapped, we're locked in the past. Now, there's a type of slavery that is right now devastating so many lives around the world. We know it as the human slave trade. Mishpatim speaks about what to do with someone who kidnaps another human being. That's happening right now as we speak in Israel. All our hostages have been kidnapped. The kidnapper needs to be put to death. And we learned this week of the 31 of the hostages who Hamas kidnapped. They have to be murdered, leaving us with about 100 people who remain victims of torture, both mental and physical. That also affects families and friends, and even us. We're affected by it when we hear about it. They're being robbed of their humanity by people who have been robbed of theirs. Even these people who are perpetrating, they've been robbed of their humanity. We need to keep praying that God reaches down and comforts them and helps the IDF to find them and set them free. But let's not forget all the other people from countries all around the world who are caught up in this vicious web of the slave trade. The Torah holds the solution. There's no prison system in the Torah. The people who commit these heinous crimes were to suffer, and still are to suffer, the death penalty. Today, the leftists think that by eliminating the death penalty, we are being more humane than God. But look at the results. Crime is on the increase. There are more prisoners than ever, more prisons than ever. This shows us that wherever and whenever we throw at the Torah, we throw at justice. In Mishpatim, we find the solution for other crimes such as theft, where the thief needs to pay back what he stole with interest. That's called making restitution. And those who commit premeditated murder are given the death penalty. If it was not premeditated, and it was interesting because when I listened to the portion being read, it said, God handed this person over. So no one can take anybody's life unless God allows it. But if it was not premeditated, there would be cities to which they could flee so that the victim's family could not exact vengeance upon them. These Mishpatim elaborate upon the last 5 of the 10 Commandments. These last 5 teach us how to treat our neighbor, how to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. These are not extra commandments. They're not the 613 commandments or mitzvot given to us by our sages that were meant solely for the Jewish people, and the Gentiles only have to obey the 7 Noahide laws. That's not what the Torah is saying. These 613 actually 603 elaborate upon the 10. And the 10 commandments are universal, which is why God gave them to us at Mount Sinai, not in the Promised Land. They are examples showing us how to apply them to our daily lives. And they may seem simple, but they're not easy to do. And I know that I've spoken about this. The Rabbi has spoken about it. It's sometimes I feel like I'm a broken record. But God keeps repeating it over and over and over for us to get, for us to understand. And the entire scriptures are stories about what happened to us as a people when we kept them and when we didn't. Our history, right up to today, has shown this same pattern being repeated. When we keep them and when we don't, what happens to us? We cried out to Moses at that time that we didn't want to hear God's voice. And most of us today still prefer to spend more time looking up the latest fads by all kinds of so-called gurus on every subject under the sun, while most still don't want to hear God's voice. But those who do, we are a remnant, and it's up to us as the remnant to hold on to the light of truth and spread it, not by banging people over the head with the Bible or the Torah, but by living the principles of the Torah. And that's how we can be a light. And it only takes one small candle to light up an entire room. Mishpatim goes into great detail about how we are to live, about good and decent behavior. And keeping these commandments is a full-time job. We are each responsible for our actions. And we must accept the consequences and stop blaming others for our lot in life. No one else can make restitution for what we do. No one but us. The moment we accept that is the moment that our lives can change for the better. When we obey, God helps us to progress from confusion and hate to order and peace. When we add or take away anything from the Torah, we cause confusion. When people become too religiously fanatic, making everyone around them feel inferior and imposing their rules on others, it only serves to turn people away from God. Make no mistake, it's not only the Orthodox Jews who do this. It's any one of us who thinks that we are better than others and proudly parade our good deeds without seeing that we ourselves are breaking any one of the original 10 Commandments. Whenever justice, according to these 10, is removed from society, order turns to chaos. The God of Israel is a God of order, yet we humans seem to insist upon chaos. That's what we're seeing today in every area of our lives. God wants to free us from slavery, from chaos, from greedy power mongers who impose upon us perverted systems of justice. At the end of Mishpatim in Exodus 24, we read, Moses went and repeated to the people all the commands of the Lord, Yud He Vav He, and all the Mishpatim. And all the people answered with one voice, saying, all the things that the Lord has commanded, we will do. God never imposed his Mishpatim upon us. And if we are willing to keep them as he said he would, he promises to keep us safe, happy, and healthy. Are we safe? Are we happy? Are we healthy today? What is it about us that causes us to refuse to do and obey the simple words that Moses wrote, and choose and prefer to do things our own way? We're like children, constantly challenging our parents. The children of Israel were no different. We are no different. We're caught in an inner battle between the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, and the Yetzer Hatav, the good inclination. And we must constantly examine ourselves to see which one we are giving more energy to, and be willing to leave behind the slavery of our past. That's when God will help us. As we look around the world, we are witnessing what our sages called Chavlei HaMashiach, the birth pangs of the Messiah. From the moment that male and female were created and expelled from the Garden of Eden for disobeying just one commandment, we have been rebelling against our God, even blaming him for everything that goes wrong in our lives. We either refuse to believe in his existence, or we turn away from his commandments, from his Mishpatim and his Hukim, and we replace them with our own suggestions. And by so doing, we go against everything that God stands for. For example, we take his name, his identity, in vain. If he says that his creation of male and female was very good, what we say is, I can change my gender if I want. And then we impose this ideology upon the masses as if we were gods. The further we remove ourselves from his commandments, the stronger the birth pains will get. Each of us has to realize our part in this. The horrendous violence from Hamas against our children, our people, is worse than what Hitler did. The birth pangs are increasing. And if you and I think that the 10 Commandments are just suggestions, that we don't need them, we are lying to ourselves, and we are allowing chaos to rule and the birth pangs to continue to increase. When I read Exodus 23, I immediately thought of the people who are marching around the world and shouting, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And we see that once again our enemies want to annihilate us. But here is what the Lord God of Israel says to them in Exodus 23, verses 20 to 31. Behold, I send an angel. That's malach. It could be a messenger. It might be Joshua. It might be the archangel Michael. We're not really sure, but the rabbis have various opinions. Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place which I have prepared. Take heed of him. Listen to his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. But if you shall indeed listen to his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversary. For my messenger shall go before you and bring you to the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, and all the modern names for them, and I will cut them off. You shall not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do as they do, but you shall utterly overthrow them, break down their pillars into pieces, and you shall serve the Lord your God, and listen to what he says. He will bless your bread and your water, and remove sickness from among you. God says, I will remove sickness from among you. No one shall miscarry, nor be barren in your land. You will live a long life, and I will send my terror before you and will unnerve all the people to whom you shall come. And I will make your enemies turn their backs upon you. And I will send the hornet before you to drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, the Hittites from before you. Now listen carefully. And I will set your border from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the river. And I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out before you. That's the true meaning of the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Wow, that's God's promise. And he never goes back on his word. The only way for us to be safe from our enemies is to turn back to the God of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to his Torah. Then his angel of the armies will march to war ahead of us. No one can save us from our enemies but Yud He Vav He, the Lord of the armies. There's no other. This is not only for us as a nation, a people, but for each one of us who walks with him in our lives. Both the natural-born citizen of the land and the stranger among us, the Ger. There's only one God for all peoples of the world. There is no other. And I suggest, if you haven't read the Haftorah portion in Isaiah 66, please do. His promises are so great to us, and there's so much that we can be grateful for. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.